Welcome to the Ranya Show. I'm your host, Ranya. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk with you every time and answer questions. This show will be all about trauma, manifesting, and everything in between. This is the very first episode of the show, and I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for listening in. Thank you for asking questions, leaving comments, feedback. I welcome it all. So, before we begin, I just wanted to give you a little background information about me and why I'm doing this. So, my name is Rania, as I've mentioned before. And one of the biggest reasons why I'm doing this is because I want to help people the way I wish I was helped growing up. And when I was going through certain experiences, certain events, and I wish I had the tools and resources to help with the process, to navigate all the emotions that I was feeling and everything that was coming up for me, and all the things I believed about myself based on those experiences, based on those events. And that's why I decided to start this because I want to be able to provide all of you with the tools and the resources that now I have and that have helped get me to where I am today and have helped me make progress and grow. And now I'm thriving. So I want the same for you. And that's why I'm doing this. So, as I stated before, just a little background information about me and like what led me down this path. Um, the biggest the biggest experience I had was when I started having non epileptical seizures, which are disassociation spells. And basically, it's when your whole body just shuts down and you feel paralyzed and you can't rarely speak or respond. And that was like my I got to do something about this point. And because of that, I started to dive deeper into trauma, into what experiences and what events that have happened and how they shape us. And sometimes it's generational, sometimes it's childhood, and we tend to carry them with us. And we tend to start believing those things about ourselves. And then we find more evidence to prove the beliefs that we have about ourselves and proof that things are not going to get better or things are never going to change. And this is just going to keep happening over and over and over again. And I speak from experience because I used to wonder why this was happening to me. I used to wonder, when am I going to breathe? When is this going to stop? When am I going to be happy? And I would constantly ask these questions. And then I would question my beliefs. I would question my faith in God and in the universe. And I would just be like, okay, well, if I'm supposed to be on this earth and I'm supposed to be having these experiences, why are they so painful? Why are they so horrible? And then when the seizure started happening, I was kind of forced to answer those questions. And before I even knew what was happening and before, there was a label for it, I would cry myself to sleep every single night because I didn't know if I was going to wake up the next day because I was in and out of hospitals and no one had answers for me. Everything came back normal, well, depends on how you define normal. But all the tests that I did came back negative. I did neuro tests, I did blood tests, I did nerve tests, everything like you could think of, I did it over and over and over again. And the seizures just kept getting worse. They weren't getting better. And I remember one time I was in the hospital, and again, a doctor came in to let me know that everything came back normal. All my tests were negative. And then he asked me, did something happen to you as a child? Like, did you experience a traumatic event that you might have been blocking out that might be causing all of this? And that's when I started to like wonder, like, oh, what might have happened? That's so traumatic that I blocked it out. And I started to think about, like it had to be something super bad. So like I started to have my mind create something that had to be so horrendous that I had to block it out because it couldn't be something that they might label small or, you know, a a small event or a small experience that created this trajectory for more experiences to happen and for more events to happen. So I just started thinking like the worst, worst, worst case scenarios. And then I was like, but wait a minute, what did happen that made me feel a certain way about myself or led me to believe certain things about myself? And how did they start stacking? So I started to do more of the inner work to deep dive into energetics, manifestation, trauma. I worked with some really great uh, people that coached me, and I also was a part of some programs that I still refer back to from like the tools and the resources that I used. I still refer back to them. And then I just got so fascinated. I've always been fascinated with like how the human mind works, how um like what makes us human and what makes us tick, what makes us happy, emotions and after what happened with me, I just went in full, like I wanted to get to the root of it. I wanted to know every aspect of it. And the more I dug in, the deeper I went in, the more I learned and the more fascination came of it. And now looking back at everything that I have learned and everything that I'm still learning, because it's a constant thing, it's not like a one and done. It's just you're constantly learning new things about yourself. You're constantly learning new tools and resources. And it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. So now I use them. I use those tools, I use those resources. I've tweaked some of them because at the end of the day, all the tools and the resources that we have are there to support us, are there to guide us, are there to help us, are there to heal us. So the basis of it all is the same, but it's how we use them and what we do with them. And so for me, it was a lot of sitting still, a lot of sitting with what was coming up for me because I used to always just suppress it and push it down and tell myself I'll deal with it later. Like, I don't have time for this. I got to make sure this gets done and I have to make sure this person's okay and meet their needs. But by meeting other people's needs, I was neglecting my own. And the more I did that, the more I was suppressing myself, the more I was suppressing my emotions, the more I was suppressing who I am, to the point where my body's like, whoa, hello, what about us? Why aren't we taking care of us? Why aren't we making us a priority? No, that's what we're going to do moving forward. And so my body forced me to, because it completely shut down. And that was the biggest wake up call for me, because I'm like, if I can't function and this is happening one too many times, and at times it was happening for like half an hour, where like I was completely like paralyzed, and it was so scary. And I was just like, I would have the seizure, and then I would just sit there and cry, because it was the only thing that was working, was like my tear ducts. So it was just like uncontrollable crying, and they would just keep rolling down, and my eyeballs could move, and I can hear you, but I just couldn't respond at times. And at times I could like respond somewhat. It was like slur of the words, or at times it was very childlike. So those are all guiding things, like a kind of like compass. And those events, like during the seizures, were like a compass for me, because everything that I was experiencing was stemming from my childhood, but it was also stemming from generational trauma. And for me growing up, I always felt responsible for everyone else's well being but my own, to the point where I started feeling like I didn't even know who I was anymore, and that I had to produce emotions because they didn't come naturally. So it's like I would sit back and observe, and then I would just be like, oh, I'm supposed to be sad about this. Okay, let's be sad. And oh, I'm supposed to be happy about this. Okay, so let's be happy. And it's just like, it's on autopilot. I felt so like robotic. But at the same time, all these emotions that wanted to come up to the surface, I was suppressing them. And I was like, no, 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 I don't have time for this. I have too much going on. I need to like get all of these things done. You need to come back later. And I turned my emotions away one too many times, where my emotions were like, excuse me, no, we're going to break down the door, because you can't continue avoiding us, and you need to feel us, and you need to let us through, because we need to be acknowledged, we need to be heard, and we need to be loved. And so the more work that I did, the inner work, the more guidance, tools, and resources I acquired, the more I was able to be like, oh, I'm so sorry I neglected you. Yes, you are important. You're the most important. You're the priority. And everyone else comes second. And for me, that shifted so much for me. And now I love this person that looks back at me in the mirror, and I sit with her. I even sit with my inner child, where I'll have conversations with little me. I can conjure up the dress that she's wearing, the shoes she has on, what her hair looks like. And her and I sit and talk. And I ask her, what needs of yours that were not met, and how can I meet them? Because at the end of the day, all I've got is me, myself, and I. No one knows what goes on through my mind other than what I share. No one knows what I went through. other than what I share, and no one knows what I want other than what I share. So the best person to talk about all of this with is myself. Versions of myself. Little me, 88-year-old me, all of them, they're me. And so I get to sit and talk with her whenever I want because she is me. And I get to have the conversations where I get to meet her needs. And oh my God, it's it's been amazing. And I've worked with I've done hypnosis. I've done, oh man, breath work. I've done meditations. I've done EFT, which is tapping, emotional freedom technique. I've done what's the other one? EMDR, which is a form of therapy. And that's also been such a great experience for me because it's a method with like your eyes, and it's just like this ball, and you just keep following it, but you're revisiting the traumatic events that you went through, and you're desensitizing them so that they no longer have that charge and that reaction from you. And that emotion just becomes an emotion. It no longer has power over you. So I do like something similar with people that I help, and we go back to those moments and we visit those moments and talk through them, and then we rewrite them. And that's one of the things that I do. Um, and just like having that tool and being able to sit with that and see how in charge you are of your own life and creating it the way that you want to is such a game changer. Because growing up, I used to think like, why does God hate me so much? Why am I being punished? I never wanted to be born. You know, I was forced. And after doing like so much work and like learning from some great people, it's now I no longer ask, why is this happening to me? I ask, why is this happening for me? What lesson is there in it for me? And what can I learn from it so that I don't repeat the cycle again? So instead of repeating the cycle over and over again, I break in the cycle. And by breaking in the cycle, I get to start a new cycle, one that I get to pick the foundation for. I get to pick out the layout and the design and how I want it to look. And it's hard. It's not something that's like you snap your finger and all of a sudden it's a new cycle, all of a sudden it's a new life and it's new everything. But isn't it just as hard, if not harder, to continue repeating the same cycle that you never started in the first place? Because it's generational. It came from your parents' parents, their parents, and all you're doing is just repeating it. But when you take a step back and you're like, okay, well, I don't see the value in this. How is this helping me? I've done everything that that cycle told me to do. I followed the manual it gave me with instructions, and this is not working for me. So, why isn't it working for me? Has it worked for the generation before me or the generation before them? Because it doesn't look like it. It looks like they're still stuck where they were at my age. And then you start to question, like, okay, well, if it didn't, it's not working for me. Doesn't look like it's worked for them. What needs to change? And then when you start asking those questions, you start to see things. And once you start to see things, oh my goodness, believe me, you can never close your eyes ever again. You can never turn a blind eye ever again. Because, and this is again from my own experience, now that I see things in a new light, in a new perspective, in a new cycle, I cannot look at it in the old way anymore. And whenever I catch myself doing it, I'm just like, oh my goodness, look how far I've come. It's kind of like when you're young, like when I was in college, I used to go to Taco Bell and McDonald's and like all these fast food places, and it was just like amazing to eat. Okay. And I would have what is it called? Like the vegetarian crunch wrap. I would have that like every other day. And I would have McDonald's. And now I'm just like, how did I ever eat that? You know, and don't get me wrong, if you like McDonald's, you like to each his own. But for me, I'm just like, how did I ever eat that? How did I enjoy that? Because after all these years, I tried it again and it just wasn't the same. And I share this example because it's similar to when you start doing the work. You're just like, how did I ever let that person talk to me like that? How did I ever let somebody else decide what I want my life to look like for me? Because you are not the same person that you were yesterday. Yes, it might be similar experiences, it might be similar events, it might be similar people, but you are not the same. And you are not the same person that would have put up with it 5 years ago. And once you start pinpointing those moments where you're questioning things, because you are, even if you don't realize it, you're questioning things all the time. You might be suppressing the questions and the emotions tied to them, but you're doing it. And the more you do it, the more you're just like, oh, wait a minute, I don't fit in this cycle. The cycle's too small, or the cycle is weighing me down, or the cycle is not bringing me to where I want to be in my life. And then when you start taking things out and inserting things that light you up, or things that you're passionate about, or things that you found an answer to, or things that you've healed, then you're just like, oh my God, I love the cycle and what it looks like. And guess what? You get to pass that cycle on to the next generation. And then if they love it, they'll keep it. And if they don't, they'll change it. But you're showing them that they have the option to do that and that they can do that. And they don't need to fit into a mold that was made for them by somebody else. They get to create their own. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this, because I want to share all of that with you guys. And I would love to hear from all of you about your experiences. And I want to be able to have guests on the show that can share their own experiences and why they do what they currently do. Because we all want to change the world for the better, and we all want the world to thrive, and we all want world peace and love and equality and diversity, because we all deserve it. We all deserve to love our lives. We all deserve to be happy in our lives. We all deserve to live it the way we see fit. as long as we're not harming ourselves or anyone else. But a lot of us were taught that our options were limited, that our options were handed to us in a manual with instructions. And so we listened because those manuals were handed to us by people that we loved or love. And we looked to them for support and to meet our needs. And they met it with the old cycle, and we accepted it because they are really doing the best that they can with what they know. But if all they know is one cycle that was formed by somebody else, then they also thought the same thing that we did. Our parents or our caretakers love us, and this is what they're telling us we have to do in order to survive, in order to stay alive. And we're going to take that on and we're going to repeat it. Because if you notice, once you start thinking outside a cycle, you start to question things and you start to wonder why things are the way that they are, you get met with resistance and you get met with, you've changed. Why are you being like this? Why can't you just do what everybody else does? Look how it's working out for them. They're almost, retiring. Or it, yes, it took them 20 years to get that promotion, but they got it in the end. And that's just fear, fear of the unknown, fear for safety, fear for survival. Because at the end of the day, they want you to survive. And because they don't know any different, this is how they think you will survive. There's nothing wrong with survival. We're all human, and that's how that's how we are. We're built for survival, but we're also built to live and to be. And when we suppress those gifts that are a part of who we are, what do you think is going to happen? Stress is like the number one killer. And it comes from suppressing who we are and living up to other people's expectations of who we should be, rather than living up to our own expectations of who we want to be. So, on the Ranya Show, we will talk about trauma, we'll talk about manifesting, we'll talk about healing, and we'll have some guest speakers on, and they can talk about what they do, share some of their experiences so that you can see you're not alone in what you're feeling and that you do have options. And that's one of my biggest reasons for doing this, is because I want you to know that you do have options, and no, it's not a one-way street. There's so many different routes that you can take. And it's like, you think about it, so you know how to get home, right? Because you've done it so many times. And you know that there's like 3 different ways to get home. And sometimes you stick to one because you've taken it so many times. You know it's safe. You know where the alley is, or you know what time the store closes if you're passing it. So you have all these details implemented in your mind of how to get home, that one-way street. And then you know there's two other streets that you can take that will still lead you home, but they just look a little different. And you don't know all the alleyways there. You don't know how many buildings. You don't know those small details that you know about the street that you've been taking for the last 20 years. But you're too afraid to find out what would happen if you took the second street or the third street. And so you stick to that one street for the rest of your life, always wondering what would happen if I decided to take the second street instead or the third street. And that's why this is so important for me to do, because I want you to take that second street and that third street and to see the new details of what it could look like if you took the other streets rather than the one that you take every single day because it's safe, because it's comfortable, because it doesn't challenge you, because it doesn't give you any other options. It's set options, it's limited options that you already know. And even though you know deep down inside you want more, you want a different view, you want to learn new details, you still walk down that same street every single day. I want to be able to provide tools and resources for you to take a chance and try the second street and the third street and create a fourth one. Create a whole new neighborhood, new zip code, whatever you want. But I want you to know that you do have options. And I will do my best within each episode to provide something that brings you closer to those other options. So I hope you stick with me and you tune in every single week because I'm so excited to talk to you every single day. Well, every single week, I should say. But even every day, if you leave comments, feedback, questions, I'm just happy to be here and to have you here. And I am so excited for what's to come. So thank you for sticking with me in our very first episode of The Ranya Show. I'm your host, Ranya, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.